because the Council will be charged with the regulation, organization, and supervision of all the national human organs transplant and donation activities. Mr. Chair, that is on page 5. It will also oversee, coordinate, regulate, as well as ensure the safety and quality of processes of acquiring and donating the human organ cells and tissues in the country. 4.3. The criteria for transplant centers. The bill provides for safeguards and quality control of places authorized to conduct transplant procedures. So clause 30 of the bill provides for the criteria in considering specialized hospitals as a transplant center. The criteria is limited to hospitals with fully fledged emergency care and surgery services such as intensive care units, specialized medical professionals, and the like. This is a commendable safeguard which will help in improving the quality of human organ transplant and donation activities, Mr. Chair. 4.4, prohibition of children as potential donors. The bill excludes and prohibits children and persons below the age of 18 from organ donation. Children are vulnerable and are never in position to consent to such procedures. Clause 72 explicitly provides any donation from a living child. This provision is therefore important in protecting children from exploitation and abuse. However, this provision is only applying to living children. 4.5, Mr. Chair. Protection of poor and vulnerable persons. The risk of exploitation of vulnerable and poor persons is high. Guiding Principle 5 of WHO, that is the World Health Organization, guiding principle on human cells, tissues, and organ transplantation states that the human body and its parts cannot be subjected to commercial transactions. That is a footnote down there as a reference. In order to protect persons from exploitation, the bill under Clause 86 prohibits commercial dealings in human material for transplantation. This means that monetary or any form of compensation for organs, tissues, or cells other than reimbursement of donation-related expenses is prohibited. The sale of one pair of organs such as eyes or kidney or a living donor for financial or other forms of compensation is also prohibited. Mr. Chair, page 6. The Commission notes that allowing the practice of organ selling inherently runs the risk of promoting the notion that some persons have less worth than others and that persons have a price, which is incompatible with dignity. The success of transplantation as a life-saving treatment should not require nor justify victimizing of poor or vulnerable people as a source of organs for the rich. The UHRC therefore welcomes these provisions in the bill. Mr. Chair, 4.6, provision of the national waiting list. Clause 53 describes that donation system, that's the national waiting list, as a fair and equitable system. It states that in subsection 5 that access to organs, cells, and tissues shall be provided without regard to recipient sex, age, religion, race, creed, color, or financial standing. In other words, access to transplant of organs, cells, or tissue is based on the principle of non-discrimination. 4.7, Mr. Chair. Requirement for registered practitioners to obtain authority and consent before harvesting any tissue. Under Clause 61 and 67 requires all registered medical practitioners in transplant centers will be required to obtain consent before harvesting any tissue, cell, or organ from the donor. 71 clause also provides for authority to remove all human organs, tissues, and cells. The process of obtaining the consent shall be written or spoken in a language that is understandable to a donor or to the donor's next of kin under Clause 61(6). The UHRC believes that obtaining the consent from any donor before a procedure of donation is necessary to ensure the right to health is respected and protected. 4.8, Mr. Chair. Informed consent. Any intervention in the health field can only be carried out after the person concerned has given free and informed consent to the procedure. Clause 67 4B and C includes the responsibility of the Council to inform the donor of a long-term benefits and risks relating to the procedure. This will enable the donor to make informed decisions about the donation. In according to the WHO Guiding Principles on Human Cells, Tissues, and Organs, Mr. Chair, page 7, transplantation, there needs to be an adequate balance of interest of recipients and donors. Benefits to both parties should outweigh the risk associated with the donation and transplantation. Mr. Chair, there's a footnote down there as a reference from WHO. 4.9, Mr. Chair, revocation of consent. Donors should be free to revoke or withdraw consent any time before the procedure is done. The HRC is happy to note that the bill provides for an option of revocation of consent. Under Clause 94, a person may revoke consent given at any time before harvesting of organs or cells without giving any justification. Mr. Chair, 5.0. This section contains the concerns arising out of the bills. The Commission notes that the bill still has some clauses which raise human rights concerns and may either require review or consideration. Mr. Chair, these include 5.1, the definition and proof of brain death. The definition of brain death is important in all deceased donor transplantations. Accepting brain death is often most problematic, yet it has not been defined in the bill. It hasn't been defined in the bill. For one to be brain dead, there should be mandatory and sound medical evidence that the brain is irreversibly dead. While the public in most cases generally accept medical conclusions of brain death, there have been occasionally cases where families have rejected medical diagnosis of brain death by medical team. The HRC therefore notes that the term brain death is not defined in the interpretation section, even though the term is mentioned in Clause 69 of the bill. The recommendation here is, Mr. Chair, 5.2, compensation for loss of earnings. Clause 86 prohibits commercial dealings in human material for transplantation and stipulates that monetary or any other form of compensation for organs, tissues, or cells other than reimbursement of donations-related expenses is prohibited. Clause 88 2A allows for payments which do not constitute financial gains or comparable advantages, in particular compensation for living donors for loss of earnings or any justifiable expenses caused by the removal or related medical examinations. UHRC is concerned that the provision for compensation of loss of earning could result into commercialized dealings of organs, tissues, and cells in pretext of compensation for lost earnings. So the UHRC recommends, Mr. Chair, that the bill excludes any clauses which could be misconstrued, misinterpreted, or exploited to cause commercial dealings in human material for transplantation, Mr. Chair. 5.3, there is need for clarity on the waiting list. Clause 52 of the bill provides that the Council shall establish and maintain a national waiting list for potential organs, tissue, and cell donors and recipients drawn from designated transplant centers, hospitals, and health centers. However, the Commission is concerned about the criteria, priority of the waiting list, and the concerns relate to the following, Mr. Chair. A, who gets priority to receive an organ, tissue, or cell? B, whether the priority will be based on the urgency of the patient or receive an organ, severity of the person's illness, age, first come, first serve, or other factors. C, whether social and economic social status or other factors will influence the decision. And D, whether a donor has an option to donate to a relative or preferred individual. Mr. Chair, page 9. This bill does not provide for situations where a donor may prefer to donate to a particular individual. In such circumstances, it is not clear whether the donor has an option of donating to a preferred individual or whether the council will instead follow the list as listed above if the criteria is mentioned. So, Mr. Chair, UHRC recommends that the bill should make provision for situations where individuals decide to donate to a relative or friend who may not be on the list. It should also give clarity on the priority groups of persons to receive the organs. Mr. Chair, 5.4, medical and psychosocial support to donors. Of the fact that the process of organ transplantation is very expensive and only limited to the surgical process, but also continuing rehabilitation process. The bill does not include how the donor will be assisted medically and psychologically in the recovering process, which might take long depending on the procedure taken, Mr. Chair. The Commission is particularly concerned about the vulnerable persons who might not be able to meet those costs. So UHRC, Mr. Chair, recommends that the bill explicitly includes a provision for medical and psychosocial support to donors who might require long-term care after removal of the organ. This will be aimed at assisting the donors to recover and not for payment of the donation organs. Technical and human resource, Mr. Chair, that is 5.4. The bill under Clause 3 states that the bill, once enacted into law, will apply to the donation and transplantation of human organs, tissue, and cells to include kidneys, heart, lungs, liver, pancreas, intestines, thymus, bone marrows, skin, among others. The Commission welcomes the wide range of different vital organs, tissues, and cells to be transplanted and donated. However, the Commission is concerned about the readiness of government in terms of the availability of human resource, expertise, infrastructure. Mr. Chair, page 10. Coupled with the required technology to undertake such massive and highly technical specialized surgeries, Mr. Chair. So this is the recommendation from the Commission. Uganda Human Rights Commission recommends that before the bill is enacted into law, government should be well prepared to undertake such procedures, such as all processes, including specialized medical experts, transplant centers, storage facilities, and power sources should be in place. There should be a wide dissemination of this law to ensure that the public embraces and understands the law and what it entails, Mr. Chair. We on 5.5. Absence of complaints procedure. Mr. Chair, the bill does not provide for any complaints or redress procedure for donors or their relatives in instances where a surgery goes wrong or mishandled. In Clause 14, the bill provides that the Council may investigate any complaint of breach of any of the provisions of this Act or any applicable law. However, it does not give the procedures to victims or their next of kin on how a complaint may be made. Mr. Chair, UHRC recommends that clear complaint procedure be included in the bill as a way of ensuring access to justice as well as redress for any violation of their rights. Mr. Chair, 5.6, access to information. While it is clearly articulated in Clause 47.4.5, the public will have access to information regarding donation of organs, tissues, or cells. The wording of the provision leaves room for designated transplant centers to establish or produce their individual material stroke literature, thus giving room for inconsistency in information for dissemination. The right to health includes the right to receive, impart, and seek health-related information in an accessible format, Mr. Chair. The last page is page 11, Mr. Chair, and in this, Uganda Human Rights Commission recommends that all material stroke literature relating to organ donation should be standardized and regulated. Information should be accessible, available, acceptable, and of good quality for all including persons, Mr. Chair. And I hereby conclude 6.0, Mr. Chair. The enactment of a law on organ donation and transplantation is key in addressing a number of human rights violations that Uganda faces, and these have been at the forefront in recent years, from murder of women in Wakiso and extraction of their body organs to human trafficking and kidnapping of people to different countries for human extraction without their knowledge or consent. However, with the enactment of this law, the government will ensure that organ donation and transplantation is done in a regulatory and safe manner to ensure that those in need of organs can readily access them in Uganda and that donors are well informed and able to consent to safe procedures. We are confident, Mr. Chair, that organ transplantation will be a safe procedure that gives new hope and new life to thousands of people. I hereby present on behalf of the Commission with my colleagues here.
Thank you. The bill has come at a very, very appropriate time where we need to expedite the process of putting this in law. We all appreciate we have various companies and organizations that are taking children out for greener pastures, all for what? And we know, we have information that our children have suffered out there. But when they come back after suffering the organ donation and transplant without their consent, there is no law to trace it up. Going back to your presentation, I want to react to a few issues, and I'll first go straight to the issue concerning the expertise, infrastructure, and human resource in Uganda to handle. I want to allay the fears that Uganda, and put it right on record, that Uganda can handle and it will be able to handle the transplant. We have all the experts. You've witnessed, what is that? Right. We've witnessed our own doctors being flown out of the country to do the transplant by some other countries. We have our own here who are even ready to do a maiden organ transplant. So with the human resource, infrastructure, we have Mlago. We can start with that. We don't need to start big. We need to start small and then we grow as and when need arises. So with that, I believe we are ready. We are more than ready. We've interacted with experts, the doctors, who have been contracted, who have been thrown out of the country to do the transplant. So with that, we want to assure you that we are ready. We are even behind the schedule. Probably our children, Ugandans, wouldn't be suffering organ transplant because this, if we had put this in law. Secondly, you talked about, still page 9, you talked about the bill donating. Of course, we are looking at considering a relative donating to a relative. And the council is here to screen and make sure that the right thing is done. For us, what we want is also to put the council to task to do the right thing. If they don't do the right thing, then they will be answerable. And the council, I believe, will be a council of only experts, none other than experts. I believe now these other friends and all this come in, but when we've considered donating to a relative, and the relative should consent to the donation, then compensation for the loss, really if we allow compensation for the loss, we shall be allowing earning and commercialization. So we are yet to look into that, discuss that concern. It will also depend, because of course a relative may be willing to donate, but now what happens thereafter, after that donating, who foots the expense of treating the donor? That is also an issue that we should really consider. Then, really, page 7, revocation of consent, revocation without giving consent will put now to the recipient in now a weird situation. The donor should consent, should give reasons that's why he's withdrawing at the last moment, because that when the time comes for donation, like they are ready, it takes only we were told by the experts, only 2 hours for the whole process to be done. So if somebody now wants to withdraw within that period of time, what happens to the recipient? Supposing the other experts have already started opening up for somebody to receive, and then this one withdraws, what happens? So it is something which we should also look at before we can come to a conclusion. Otherwise, I want to thank you so much for this supporting the bill, because your submission is in support of the bill. And I want to assure you that we are ready to move, and we are here to move and assist the Ugandans, the poor Ugandans who are suffering at the expense of those who are benefiting from the organ donation. I want to thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable. Honorable.
Which was not observed, was not written clearly in the bill. Perhaps it is because they didn't want the bill to be very thick. However, your issue over the experts, it's a pity you have not got the chance of meeting the experts together with us. That day, those young doctors presented the bill to us for me to hear it for the first time. I was very excited. It showed to me clearly that Uganda is very, very progressive in the medical field. And more so, those were very, very young doctors. I was very, very excited. And in fact, if these other things were not there, I would want them to start work straight away so that I could actually see it with my own eyes. I'm glad you have mentioned these things. Organ transplant, the major ones it's going to be for the first time. You mentioned about skin. I remember when I was in primary, I had a very interesting incident. They used to do skin grafting. And one time, there's a man who had a very big tropical ulcer. And every now and then it is grafted. So one time, the skin graft came from a neighboring person. And the days these people went for the Lugbara cultural dance, and they were busy dancing. And the other one said, after all, you are just proud for nothing. On your leg there is my skin. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because your observation is very, very thorough. This was even before I entered into medical practice. But it is true, we need to identify the issues of social aspect of this bill carefully. If it is from a relative, what consent is there? But also I've learned, I happen to have worked in a bone marrow transplant in the United States. Usually they would harvest the bone marrow. I think that time they wouldn't tell who's, because they would harvest the bone marrow and store it. And when the need comes, it will be brought out to be given to the person. But now medicine has advanced so much. Is that still going to be workable? I like the way you have gone low down to pick all these. And you've, in fact, to me, you have really done a thorough work and opened our eyes with things which, as a medical person, I didn't even think of seriously. Chairman, thank you very much. On the other hand, I totally agree with them.
Thank you, Honorable Rematia. Senior members from
present before us on this important topic, on this important concern, where many Ugandans are suffering because of the lack of the law when it comes to organ transplant. And like some of my friends said, many of our Ugandan youth who want to go abroad, we've seen them on TVs and everywhere crying. And it's just because we have no law, but thanks be to God that at a time as this, the law is before us so that we can at least add value. I want to appreciate you for all your observations. And indeed, like on 1.1, as you said on the definition and proof of brain death, I also want to concur with you because I know human beings are difficult. They may terminate life even before God calls that life back home. So it is very important that we may have that definition of ascertaining whether someone has surely died. If not, we shall have those many challenges of people forcing others to pack and go. So we need to be very careful as a committee when we come up with that important section of the law. Also of the concern is when it comes to making the waiting list. Making a waiting list with these human beings and more so the corruption and everything which is surrounding this country, I'm not so certain of who should come up with the waiting list or else. It will be now something of you give in money and you are put on the list. How shall we protect the vulnerable, the poor, who have no money, who have no say, who have no relative, and are in need of these organs? Even though it is also tricky to come up with the first come, first serve when someone has come with a relative to donate. Because, like, what is the practice today? If you have someone who is in need of a kidney, you look for a relative with the same group blood and everything, you go for testing. So if I've harvested, if I've looked for my donor, do I need to be on the waiting list? And you say, since you've come now, I will not accept this donation to take place when I've come with my person. So it is a little bit tricky unless when we are talking of having a system where if someone is tired of one kidney, will willingly go and say, I'm donating to any person who is available. But if we do not have that in place, how shall we solve this challenge? It's a little bit tricky. We need to be very careful, or else we may still come up with the law, but we shall still have some of those challenges. And also on building the capacity of our staff, or our workers, our senior member here has said that Uganda has built the capacity. But we are coming up with sophisticated tissues, like bone marrow, skin, among other intestines. In Uganda here, do we have the capacity of getting intestines from one person, then you place in another person? And maybe it is possible, but I also want to say that as government, now that we are coming up with the bill to expand on some of these tissues, we need to put money to build the capacity of our people, to deliberately equip them, empower them, train them, so that we do not go on a try and error method. But if we have the technical staff, yeah, that is the Uganda I also want to be in.
Honorable Margaret, the only challenge we have, if you had the Honorable Matia, Honorable
And team from Uganda Human Rights Commission. My name is Kenny Aguma, one member of parliament for Kwania district. I want to thank the team from Human Rights Commission for the elaborative explanation about the bill that we are about to pass in this country. I have some few concerns after reading through this. There are so many things that we have seen here that we need to make amendments where possible. First, I'm going to page 5 and 4.5, protection of poor and vulnerable persons. Under this, there is the sale of one pair of organs, such as eye or kidney, by living donor for financial or other form of compensation is also prohibited. I just want to ask this question. Under which condition can one donate his or her own organ? Because now, if freely somebody wants to sell his or her organ but is being prohibited from selling it, that is one. Another one is about provision of a national waiting list. We have seen that access to organ cells and tissues shall be provided without regard to sex, age, religion, race, creed, and other things. But we have seen a situation where there might be a situation where there is a child of around 14 years or 15 years, but also in the waiting list. At the same time, there is an elder person who is like 80 years or 100 years, is also on the waiting list. The bill should entail whether we should, in fact, it should increase, indicate the age at which the organ should be given. Assuming there is an older person of age of like 89 or 50 or 100 years, but there's a child who is also in need of this organ. So it should clearly state the age at which a person should be given or be donated the organs to.
You want to give a child and leave the only to die?
Yes.
Honorable Uma,
Yeah.
I think from that meeting we had, they were telling us about the way.
Appreciate the opportunity to speak about the human rights and the bill we are looking into, the one of organ donation and transplants. Now, this is something, Chair, I'd like to bring to the attention of the members here that we're having on stage now in Uganda, where we have to deal with the realities of the global world. You know, it's a global village. So in as much as we may not be ready or may be able to do this as quickly, because other countries, once we start transplants in Uganda, in the medical fraternity to save lives, so many things will obviously come in, from commercialization to all those things mentioned below that have been taking place. If you go to India, it's too much, from the norm, the right way of doing it, to the crazy way of doing it. People survive. Both the patient may survive, and also those giving the organs may survive, and even those who are in betweens, go-betweens, come and survive. So it's such a difficult scenario. However, I would think, Chair, is it not possible that as a country, to avoid human rights issues coming in, abuses, in this transition, trying to cope up with the India side or whatever they're doing it before, but we may just go in a frenzy and do it crazily and end up having a mess of everything? Is that not possible? To take care of the human rights issues, that we go stepwise. Before, of course, we've been doing transplants before, donations before, from blood, per se. Whereby in blood, we get, before it was a relative, for example. When the scarce relative gives in, they match you, you have similar genes here and there, so you not have reactions or failures, so they take it, and people are giving in with their hearts. My relative is going down, I need to give in this in, and they save their lives accordingly, without any commercialization here. It's just the heart. It's your heart giving in to save a life of another human being, a relative or so. Now we're going to the solid organs now. Of course, we should have to look into the liquid transplants, like the blood and others, marrows, but then the organ transplants. So is there not still, we go stepwise and look in this, they've been doing it traditionally in Uganda, that we go through. People first donating to relative, they match you, a relative, best treated, healthy, you give him to save a life. First step first, then after some time that we can discuss out maybe, and then we get and say, now after this, we can now go to a bit of non-relatives, for example. A bit of heart, a bit of money comes in. Money is not bad, it saves a life. Before you even go for the worst form of it, where they even the dead bodies, or go do the so-called getting people around and grabbing them, that's the worst form of it. Trying to save another's life or for commercial purposes. So I'm trying, therefore, Chair, that we go in this, we look at human rights issues in those steps, from the traditional Ugandan way we used to have been doing, and then we elevate a little further after some pilots, and then we know others we may just go and watch and get a lot of things coming in, and a lot of issues that are not really humanly human. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable members, for the you want. We really appreciate it. But now the problem is that when you suggest, for example, if you say, you talk about, we do not have a definition for organ donation and transplant, whatever, bill, what is your definition, your proposal, so that at least we because other people will bring another definition, and we might have like 5 definitions. But according to World Health Organization and what you have brought, we can compare and see what is your definition as the Uganda Human Rights Commission. I think those are the things that you will bring. You will forward it to the clerk through writing, so that we can, because we don't think that we shall have another time to call you back at this committee. We have a limited time, and we might go to another thing without getting your input. Then when you look at the way these things are done, when you donate, you get challenges health-wise, and you have to be put on treatment. At the same time, the person who has received the donation also is put on treatment. What suggestion do you have to make sure that at least these 2 people are treated for the period, for all of them to recover? Because this one must the cells, everything must agree. The one who is donated, the cells must agree with the donor and the client. Compatibility has to take place. Then this person who has lost a kidney has to go through treatment, and the treatment is very expensive. What suggestions do you have for these two people, so that at least the government is put on to task to make sure that it caters for all the two without money being spent for the two, the donor and the recipient? You get? We need those guidelines so that we can take them.
And I appreciate the fact that you've taken into consideration, or you're considering taking into consideration, many of our recommendations. Honorable Chair, I will first speak to the issue of the definition of brain dead. And what we're doing was to avoid issues of ambiguity. Every time there's ambiguity in a law, it can be misconstrued or misinterpreted. So that is why we said, let the law explicitly explain what brain dead is, because without that, we shall have instances of people in coma or where we're not sure of brain dead who are killed for organ harvesting. Mr. Chairman, I know a person who was in coma or brain dead for 3 months. And by the first month, they had told the gentleman, the relative, the husband, to sign off because she was not going to recover. 2 months later, into the ICU on life support, she came to, she's alive. So when we say brain dead, let us have a clear definition of what it is, because we run the risk of killing people or putting people at risk of being killed. Mr. Chairman, the other issue, so let's have a clear definition. And my colleague Florence has said, let us propose a definition. Mr. Chairman, the drafters of this law are skilled and experts in legislative drafting. Florence is good at that. So we are taking it back. For us, we highlight the human rights standards and human rights concerns, and we put it out there. Then the people who are not paid, who are recruited to draft excellently for this country, then will do a good job after we have highlighted the concerns. Mr. Chairman, the other issue is about the penalties that you raised. Mr. Chairman, when you look at the bill under, I think, clause 86, it provides for the penalties. And any person who contravenes, that means someone who sells organs, and that their penalty is life imprisonment. And we're okay with that. Yes. However, there is the third person, those who receive, okay, those who take part in negotiation, those ones, the penalty is 2 billion shillings. And because it's punitive, as a commission, we're fine. We're like, who pays 2 billion shillings? Where is it going to come from? Is it too much? Now, it is so punitive that it is a deterrence. So for us, the question was, is there anyone who can afford on their own 2 billion shillings? Or a life sentence, or no, a sentence, I think, of 20 years imprisonment. So we think that that is good enough. It is a deterrence, but it is good for us to have in our law. Then there's also 1 billion for those, I think, who aid and abet or something like that. So for us, that is why we did not highlight the issue of penalties. Mr. Chairman, I would also want, even though you're going to discuss issues of revocation, I wanted to add that as a commission, for us, we look out for the protection of the rights of Ugandans. So anything and any time where we see a threat, we have to raise it. And so a person should be able to revoke their consent at any time before the procedure starts. And we have talked about informed consent. There should be sufficient information given to this person so that there is no likelihood of revoking their consent. They should know the risks, they should know the advantages, and they should also weigh the risks over the advantages. So it's very important that someone has an option to revoke their consent. What if they have promised your mother a house and you don't know? They will not tell this to the doctor. And at the 11th hour, you also find that your life will be at risk and you're going into theater. Shouldn't I be able to say, no, I am not going to go for this? Let us try to save lives, and also not, because if you continue with that procedure, will it be lawful? No. Won't you have compelled this person and stolen their organ without their consent? Those are some of the things that we request that the committee considers. The other issue that the members raised was the issue of expertise. I am glad that the health experts came to this committee and convinced you that Uganda has the expertise and the technology to do this. However, as a commission, we wanted to raise it for the committee to be sure that what we are going to have or what we are going to go through is ready, that the country is ready. But hearing from the members, you have indicated to us that you are ready, Uganda is ready, we have the health experts, we have the technology to go through the procedures. But we have to also mitigate this. We had a case of an Asian at Mulago Hospital who used to wait with a fridge. I think you saw that, it was highly published. Who used to wait for a freezer, with a freezer, just to harvest organs from those who had gotten accidents. And the story was very popular. The question is, how do we ensure that we mitigate this? Who gives the consent? And I am glad the bill provides for that. And which kind of relative or adult can give consent? The bill provides that for that, and we are very happy with that. The other issue was about discrimination. As a commission, we can't go into discrimination, old versus young. That if someone has an organ and they're on the list, or people on the list, and someone is 70 or 60, and there's another of 30, well, my 30 years left for me to end life are equally very important to my loved ones. So as a commission, we can't recommend that prioritize the young and not the old, because the old also have something, they also have a contribution that they make to this country. So for us, we cannot say consider the old, the young and forget the old, because every life matters and is important. We've talked about the national store. We should look into this. It is good to have a store, but where are these organs going to come from? They're going to come from you guys and us. So let us be very clear. Where do these organs come from? Are they going to come from accident victims? How do we ensure that we protect our Ugandans from having their organs harvested before their time comes? So we have to protect the living to ensure that they do not lose their organs. I think for me, that is it for me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
We are under siege as a health sector for non-performance, or things are getting out of hand. We never see Uganda human rights coming to pat us on the back. Everything will be fine, you know, this and that. So can we coexist? And for us, ours is to be able to make a law that accommodates all interest groups and that benefits the end user, and that's any person who is living within Uganda. So we are happy to have you people on board. We have taken a number of your issues, and I would also want to encourage colleagues that ours is to synthesize as much information as we can, and probably the solutions to some of the challenges here may be on the last group of stakeholders that we are going to interface with next week. Then I think we shall withdraw, sit down, and we pick what works best for this law. We are not the final entity. It has to now, we have to make a report, go to the floor of Parliament, and it's further shot down there by the committee of the entire House. Okay? But otherwise, we thank you very much. I don't know if they had also touched about beyond the human rights of the patient doctor, but also the human rights of the smuggling and the cartels, the anticipated cartels, and how we can prevent Uganda from such exploitation. I will get a brief from my vice chairperson. Otherwise, thank you very much. And you're free to leave. As we listen into Uganda.
Speaker, I thank you for your communication and it is true, I am a member of Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee, and I've been so much concerned about this bill because it touches members of parliament and the pension of members of parliament, and I've been following up. And this afternoon we even had a presentation to the committee as the parliamentary commission. However, Right Honourable Speaker, it has come to our notice that government would like to take over this bill. They are coming in to frustrate the member from continuing with the bill, and several things were in the committee that I will not discuss here, but will be done by the chairperson of the committee. So, Honourable Speaker, my matter I'm raising, would it be okay for you to invite the minister, the Attorney General, to tell this Parliament, if they want to take over this bill, then how fast are they going to be? Because this is about us, the members of Parliament, and several other things. So how fast are they going to handle the bill for members to enable members do their work and to enable members settle? Because we handle all the other succession bills and the NFSF bills in a very fast manner. So how fast are they going to be, and when is the timeline that they are giving us to conclude this whole issue?
To hear that revelation from the Commissioner that government is coming in to frustrate the Parliamentary Pension Scheme amendment. First and foremost, this is members' money. Secondly, Right Honourable Speaker, I am aware that the fund managers do invest this money, doesn't sit there idle. So I'm wondering the government's interest in this bill. Why does it want to frustrate something that is ours? And it is my money that is being deducted monthly to contribute to that pension scheme, Right Honourable Speaker. This is something that should be of interest, and Right Honourable Speaker, I request the Commission to put its foot down, because that is really something that is actually leaving me wondering, did government borrow our money? And now when we make amendments, the money may not be there. Where is the problem, Right Honourable Speaker? Thank you, Right Honourable Speaker.
Speaker and honourable members, we've been noticing the shrinking number of cabinet and state ministers every time we come for plenary. Right Honourable Speaker, it is very unfortunate that we have a well and fully facilitated team of ministers. I remember I was even opposed to increasing the number of cabinet ministers, knowing that with that increase, we shall receive the best service. But Right Honourable Speaker, these people are well facilitated to the extent that they ever move with even the lead cars when we are struggling with the jam. The points we are bringing here are so pertinent, whether we are bringing a matter of national importance, whether we are debating, and we are struggling here seated with my friend Honorable Kadichu, trying to say that I was even actually dedicating her to stand in for the Prime Minister instead of me chipping in. So, Right Honourable Speaker, is it procedurally well that we come here only to debate without even the line ministries to know how the proceedings of the House are moving? Are we proceeding well? Is this the government we are serving? Honourable Kadichu,